Hello and welcome back to Mr. Miller's Art Room. Today we have a fresh new work of art to create today, and it is inspired by the season that we're currently in, which is spring. I have noticed, and many of you probably have noticed, that in the last couple of weeks, little tiny flowers and maybe even some larger flowers are starting to pop up out of the ground. It's a really exciting time because warm weather is coming soon and there's going to be a whole bunch of beautiful flowers and foliage to look at. And that brings me to the artwork at hand. I'm inspired by nature. Very often, nature is so beautiful that it makes me want to create something much like it. In this particular case, we're going to create spring flowers cut out of black paper. And then we're going to utilize tissue paper, colored tissue paper, in order to create the colors for the work of art. And just to note that one of the cool things about this work of art is that these look really cool on windows that have light shining through them. And because we're entering spring, we're going to have more light in the daytime. So the colors from the tissue paper are going to shine through. After we're done gluing the tissue paper on the back of the paper to show the colors for the flowers, then we're going to flip it around and we can utilize oil pastels to draw on top of the black paper part in order to create more designs.
This is all well and good, Mr. Miller, but what supplies shall we need?
For my kinders and first graders, we're going to stick with a 9-inch by 12-inch black piece of paper. For my second graders, we're going to be doing a 12-inch by 18-inch piece of paper. You'll need a white color pencil or a white crayon in order to draw the shapes that we're going to cut out of the paper, age or size appropriate scissors, a glue stick, and a variety of color tissue papers that will be cut up into smaller strips that are easier to manage. For the purposes of doing this video, I'm going to start with the kindergarten and first grade version because the paper fits on the table a little bit easier, but the process is still pretty much the same. The first thing that we're going to need to do is fold this hot dog style so that the paper stands tall. Now, it's very difficult for me to try to fold this and keep my eyes on the corners and edges. So instead, what I'm going to do is actually turn it to the side. I'm going to pull this down, and now I have a better visual being able to see the corners to corners and edge to edge. I want to get those lined up just as closely as I can. Now that looks pretty good to me. And what I'm going to then do is pinch the middle right here. Press that down to create the crease and slide to the left and right. We're only going to need to fold this just once. The next step is that we need to draw half of a flower, not the whole flower. And what's more, we're going to need to draw it while it's touching the crease side. The crease is the area on a piece of paper where the fold becomes permanent from us pressing. If we draw the flower shape on the wrong side, on the flappy side, what's going to happen is that we're not going to have a symmetrical looking flower.
Symmetry? Yes, I've heard you speak of this before.
Well, symmetry is when a shape looks the same on one or more sides. So what you need to do is actually create a bisymmetrical or a two-sided symmetrical shape of a flower.
Well, let's stop talking about it and do it!
I'm going to do it on this side. Make sure that you can touch and feel where the crease is so you know where it is. First thing I want to do is I want to make sure that I have enough room for my flower petals. So I don't want any of the petals to touch any of the edges of the flappy sides of the paper. I need to bring it down here. I'm going to start by coming in and creating this curve. Then what I'm going to do, knowing that this curve is about the size I want, I'm going to create a sort of sharpened oval, just like this, almost like an almond. And then I'll come at and do it again here. I'll do another one down here. And I'll just do one more like this. Now, wherever I drew these lines, that's what I'm going to be cutting away. The next thing that I'm going to do is draw a little bit of a circle. And the thing about this circle is that it's going to actually overlap some of these shapes because I'm going to cut this circle away as well. So that's going to disappear. The next thing I'm going to want to do is draw the stem of the flower. I don't want the stem to necessarily touch. Our eyeballs will understand that the flower is all connected together. As you can see in this example, the stem doesn't actually touch the flower petals. I'm going to go ahead and move a little bit down, then I'm going to come out at a diagonal line, and then I'm going to make this kind of close to the paper at the edge of the crease. After that, what I'm going to do is come back down with another diagonal line. Many flowers around here have petals toward the bottom, and I'm going to make one large petal, and I don't want it to touch the stem either. I'm going to come out, swing wide, loop like an almond, and loop back down, and I'm going to make sure that I avoid touching any of these sides down here. The next step is going to be cutting all of these shapes out. Remember, open the scissors up wide, put the scissors in the back of the jaw, and do your best to follow the lines. Remember that the scissors should always be pointing away from you, and that you don't turn the scissors. What you're going to do is turn the paper. Now, I'm going to cut over here, and what I'm going to do is turn back around. You can, if you're very skilled, keep turning the paper at angles to get these cut. But sometimes it just makes a lot of sense to pull your scissors all the way out and then re-enter your scissors back into the shape. As long as you're cutting on the lines, you're fine. Once that shape is cut out, you just move these scraps out of the way and we'll get to the rest of the shapes. If ever you're cutting and you have just a little tiny nubbin that's connected, instead of just ripping or pulling, what you want to do is just give it a little bit of a twist and then you can pull it off. Then we're going to go ahead and cut out this leaf just like so. And if you're a little bit on the line, a little bit off the line, that's okay. You don't have to be perfectly on the line, just as long as you're generally following it, because honestly speaking, this is not perfect class.
It's art class.
Once we're done cutting, what we're going to do is open this up carefully, and we've got ourselves our flower shape. The next step will be to glue our colored tissue paper to the back of this flower. It's going to look a little bit funny because the tissue paper is going to overlap on top of the shapes. So it won't look quite right to your eyes initially, but once we flip it over, it's going to look really fantastic. Now the other problem is that we have to make sure that we only put glue on the black paper part. You have to be very careful with this because if you start gluing onto the table and then you put the tissue paper down, what happens is that the tissue paper will get glued to the table, and when you try to pick up your artwork, it's not going to pick up. It might even rip the tissue paper. So when we do this, what we're going to do is open up our glue stick. Then we're going to choose some colors. Now, you can utilize any of these colors that you want, but understand that the tissue paper is very thin and it's very translucent, which means you can kind of see through it. And we don't want to add too many, but we don't want to add too few. And another cool thing is because it is a little bit see-through, if you overlap some of the colors through the light, it's going to look pretty cool. So let me show you at first. Now, I don't want to use this huge piece of tissue paper for the entire flower, so maybe I just want to rip it a little bit. Now, what I'll do is I'll set this here, and I'm going to take my glue stick and just glue a little bit, a couple of spots, it doesn't take very much, around the back. And then once I place that down, I just smooth it out a little bit, and then maybe I come back in with this one. I like this kind of bluish green color, and you can do a little bit of glue on the tissue paper, but don't try to put glue on this tissue paper right here because it's not very stable. I'm going to put it on the black paper because it's a stronger color. It's a stronger paper. Now, if you have just a little bit of a flap like this right here and you want to just kind of pin it down, don't put glue all over the place. You just don't need that much. What I'm going to do, I want this to be kind of flat sitting, so I'm just going to do a little, see what happens? It's very sensitive. I'm just going to put a little bit right there. See if I can't fix my mistake down here. Put a little bit of glue. Pop it down there. Pop it right there. And then we're square and ready to go. Now for the stems and the leaves, I want to utilize some of these green colors. I have a deeper bluish green, I have a regular green, and there might be a yellowish green somewhere in here. Oh, it's right behind. You gotta sometimes tease it out. But there's a yellowish green. I want to utilize these. Now, if you want to choose something a little bit different for your color choices, that's up to you, but I want to keep this a little bit natural looking. So now what I'm going to do is just kind of plate some of these up, and let's see. I'm going to move that there, and that should fit pretty good right there. Some glue, a little bit of glue. Be careful in these little spots because you don't want to get glue on the table. Remember, if you get glue on the table, the tissue paper may get stuck. So then what I'm going to do is I'm going to place this right there, place this right here. I want it to really cover. I don't want to have any open spots. I'm going to move this right there. And I've got a little bit of a spot right here that's still open. So my solution is I'm going to just very carefully tear a little bit this extra green off. And I'm going to place it to fill in that gap. Now, it looks funny, doesn't it? But once I turn it around, I have a beautiful looking flower. But I'm not done yet. I'm going to utilize oil pastels to create various designs, grass, bees, or maybe flies. Just bring some life to this, such as these blue spirals, this little biz-buzzing bee, perhaps some grass texture, and even the symbol for sunshine. Well, for Mr. Monocle and I, we say good day.
We said good day.